Hey everybody, this is a presentation done by BRM on field manuals on the Hack Smarter Discord, led by Grep for More Coffee and myself. Hope you enjoy. Hello, hello. I wanted to hop on stage for a quick second and just make some noise. Entertain
Welcome.
some people. Yeah. Hello. Nice meeting you, Grep.
You too. Thank you so much for all the stuff you've been doing with the CTFs lately. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you. BRM, are you here right now? Thought I'd just ask you,
Yes, I was AFK, but I joined
yeah,
just in time to hear you speak.
yeah, nice. I was just wondering, I guess you're gonna get started talking about creating a field manual and stuff, but just beforehand, if you just want to talk about who you are, um, like your background a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't have to
Uh,
dox yourself,
would
but
yeah, I would briefly touch on my background and stuff, but I guess I can go more in depth while we wait.
hmm
So I am a application security engineer. I very recently made the switch from a hobbyist to having an actual job in cybersecurity. I mostly do penetration tests. I know that application security is pretty broad and is often referred to as purple teaming because it can sometimes do threat analysis and threat modeling and also pen testing stuff. I mostly do red team stuff.
hmm
And besides that, I am a uh, computer science graduate. I had about 1 year of experience as a software engineer, but then I started playing CTS for fun. Discovered that I find that much more fun than working for large companies doing, enterprise software. So I decided to make the switch, and that's the gist of it.
Nice. Yeah, I thought people would like to know that about you
Yeah,
beforehand.
yeah,
Yeah.
good catch. And some people know me for my blog, which I made some blog posts about the CPTS and share around
mm.
on and got share around about on some Discord channels. So I did a blog on CPTS tips and some on reporting. And actually, this presentation I'm about to give was supposed to be a blog post, but it actually lends itself better to a presentation with slides and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
I
Thanks
am
for asking. Yeah.
fangirling over BRM. I read his blogs and it literally changed the whole way I do my notes. So
Mm.
that's why we invited him here. I truly need more information.
It's really an honor. There we go. So it's 6 sharp on my time zone. So I guess I'm gonna start. So thank you everyone for being here. In case someone still doesn't know, this is going to be a presentation all about my methodology for note taking and how it can improve your performance as a hacker. So before we even start, I'd like to do a breakdown of this presentation so that everyone knows what's up ahead. This presentation would be roughly 30 minutes long, with about 8 minutes dedicated to the theory behind field manuals, and about 18 minutes more dedicated to some practical tips that you can use to create your very own field manual. After that, there will be a Q&A section in case anyone has any questions. All right, with that out of the way, let's start. So let's start with introductions. My name is Bruno Rocha, and I go by the handle BRM. And for this past 6 months, I've been an application security engineer, which is actually my first job in cybersecurity, as I mentioned before. Before that, I was a hobbyist CTF player and a software engineer. But at some point, I decided that I wanted to make the switch to cybersecurity. So I got CPTS certified and then got the job in application security. So what I'm trying to say here is that I'm someone who very recently made a switch from hobbyist to professional hacker. And one of the things that helped me the most get ready for real life penetration testing was taking good notes while I was still a CTF player. Because you see, note taking is hugely underrated. Believe it or not, most students do not even take notes of any kind. And if they do, they're oftentimes disorganized or incomplete or hard to follow. And as a result, they suffer from it. Say, have you ever tried a CTF challenge? You got stuck in it for a few hours and then decided to finally look up a solution online. But when you do, you find out that you already knew the technique for the solution. You just didn't remember to try it out, or you didn't remember how to do it. And now you're feeling bad. You feel like you're not learning, that you're wasting your time. But the issue is not that you're not learning, you're just not taking good notes. And this is something that can be fixed with something I call a field manual. So to explain what a field manual is, I have to make a comparison to the military. Full disclosure, I am not from the military, but as you may know, many of the terms in offensive security come from military jargon. So I think it's a fitting comparison. Anyway, the military once faced a problem, which is that military operations are time sensitive. Like, imagine you're a soldier on the battlefield. You may face challenges where a single second may be the difference between life and death. So you have to make decisions quickly, right? But trying to work through complex challenges in real time is difficult and requires a lot of thinking. But thinking takes up a lot of time, which is exactly what they don't have. You guys see the issue here? Soldiers need to think to make good decisions in order to complete the mission. But if they spend too much time thinking, that in itself may cost them the mission. So, what is the solution that the military came up with? They invented field manuals. They are handbooks to be used by military personnel that provide instructions, procedures, and best practices for operations in the field. Essentially, they realize that many of the challenges their operators may face in the field are repeatable, often encountered, that they have tried and true solutions. So, they provide their soldiers with these manuals so that they can reference it during their operations to access what essentially is a database of practical knowledge in a format that is very easy to digest. This way, the soldier doesn't have to reinvent the wheel for every problem, which saves times and increases efficiency. But that's for the military, right? But guess what? We as hackers face a similar issue because our engagements are also time sensitive. For example, if you are a penetration tester, you have a fixed amount of time to find security issues for your client. If you're a bug bounty hunter, you want to find bugs as quickly as possible in order to claim the bounty. And if you are a CTF player, you want to get flags quickly to climb up the leaderboard. In addition to that, hacking is pretty complex, as most of you know, I guess, and it requires a lot of thinking. And thinking takes up a lot of time. I'm sure you see where I'm going with this. What I'm going to propose is that you take a note from the military and create a field manual for yourself. The reasoning is simple. Since time is precious to us and thinking takes up a lot of time, what we want to do is to do as much of the thinking as possible before the actual engagement even starts and time becomes an issue. We do this by creating a digital document on our computers that essentially functions as a second brain or an external memory for us. It will do some of the thinking for us to ensure that we'll never forget a technique or that we'll never become lost when we're in a scenario covered by the manual. Now, in my estimation, there are a few requirements for something to be a field manual. Not every collection of notes can be considered a field manual. First of all, your notes should be organized, well structured, and easy to navigate. You should not be confused as to where your notes about a particular topic is. You should be able to easily find anything you need within a few seconds. So having a text file with a bunch of shell commands is not good enough for us. Secondly, your notes, your field manual should cover pretty much everything you know. It cannot have big blind spots. You need to be confident that if it's a technique or scenario you faced in the past, you can't find it in your field manual. And lastly, your field manual should not be only a collection of known techniques. It also needs to help you realize which technique should be used on which common scenarios. Don't worry if you didn't catch all that. We'll delve more into the requirements later. But here, I wanted to give you all a sneak peek of my very own field manual, just to give you guys something concrete to go alongside with all this theory. Right now, what I have open are my notes on the Drupal CMS. You probably can't read it because of the streaming, but I have a section for useful commands at the top, as well as some information about the topic itself on the bottom. On the left, you can see my hierarchy of nodes. Drupal is a child of the application enumeration node, alongside stuff like Jenkins, Tomcat, and WordPress. You can also see on the top there that I have notes about RDP, SSH, and other services. Again, this is just a sneak peek I wanted to give you guys. We'll delve more into my field manual in the following pages. All right, so that was the theory or the motivation surrounding field manuals. Hopefully by now, everyone understands the importance and benefits of having a field manual for yourself. If you still don't get it, it's all right, you will soon. Now we'll move on to the practical portion of this presentation. Here I will go over step by step what I believe to be the best way of creating a field manual for yourself. If you take this lesson to heart and follow these steps, you will have a field manual for yourself in no time. Right? Sounds good? So the very first decision you must make in regards to your field manual is which notes-taking software you're going to use. There are many options for us to choose from, but we are mainly looking for the ability to structure our notes in a hierarchical fashion. That is to say, to organize our notes so that they can be children of one another. As we'll soon see, this is a very important requirement for the field manual. There are some other features that are nice to have, like being able to embed images into our notes and to assign tags. Again, there are many options of software to choose from, and you can choose whichever one you like most. But personally, I can recommend Cherry Tree and Obsidian. Cherry Tree already comes pre-installed with Kali Linux, but another very popular option is Obsidian. Originally, I wrote my field manual in Cherry Tree, but recently I'm working on porting it over to Obsidian. So let's see how it goes. But once again, choose whichever option you like the most. And just to be super clear about what hierarchical notes are, here's a sample Cherry Tree document I created. On the left panel, we have the notes hierarchy with notes from A to D. Hopefully you can see that. On the right panel, we have the contents of the selected note. So you can see that note A says hello world. We can see that B is a child of A and a parent of C, and that A and D are top level nodes because they don't have any parents. One thing to keep in mind is that notes don't necessarily have to have any content to them. You can just use them as folders for other notes, so to speak, to give structure without adding any text in them. Right? Simple enough, correct? Cool. So now that we have chosen which note-taking software we're going to use, our next step should be to establish the structure of our manual. This is critical because, as I stated before, it's crucial that our manual is very well organized so that we can find notes on any topic, even if we have thousands of notes in our manual. Trying to explain what makes a good structure can be difficult in my experience, so I'll just make a demonstration of my own field manual to show you guys how I organize my notes. All right, what you see here are the parent nodes of my field manual. That is to say, these are the nodes that every other node is a children of. You can see the children right now. You cannot see the children right now, I mean, because they are collapsed. But as you can see, the parent nodes represent the 5 stages in the penetration test engagement cycle. We have information gathering, pre-exploitation, exploitation, post-exploitation, and lateral movement. Okay, now let's imagine a hypothetical scenario. Let's say I'm doing a CTF and I find a box with an open FTP service. I want to do some enumeration on it, but I don't remember how. So now I have to find my notes on FTP enumeration on my manual. So let's see how I would navigate myself starting from the parent nodes all the way down to my nodes on FTP enumeration, even if I don't know where it is. Now, the question we want to ask ourselves is, under what node will we find our note about FTP enumeration? The answer should be pretty obvious in this case. Since we're trying to enumerate a service, it would naturally belong to the information gathering phase. So let's expand the children of the information gathering node to take a look inside. Now we can see that this node has a couple of children. We have service enumeration, web enumeration, application enumeration, and finally Active Directory enumeration. Again, we're trying to enumerate FTP, which is a service, so we should take a look inside the service enumeration node. Well, we can see that the service enumeration node has only 2 children, one for services, another for tools. Since we're not looking to get information about a particular tool, but rather information about the FTP service itself, we should expand the service node. And at long last, we can see under the service node, we can find my enumeration related nodes on many services. It's so long, it doesn't really fit the screen. But we can see here at the very top that we have found our FTP enumeration node at last. So hopefully this store gave you guys a better understanding about what I mean by a good node structure. It makes trivial to find anything just by following the logical structure of your manual itself. I have some more examples to share to really drive home how easy finding stuff becomes once you give your field manual some proper structure. let's say I want to find my node on the MSFVenom tool. MSFVenom is a tool for creating shellcodes and payloads, so I think it belongs to the pre-exploitation phase. And it's also a tool, so naturally we will find it on pre-exploitation, tools, MSFVenom. Easy. Now, what about nodes on file disclosure via XXE, XML external entity? Well, that's a web exploit, so it would belong to the exploitation phase, into the web exploitation node inside. And as you can see, I have a node just for XXE, but I also created a sub-node just for using XXE to read files on the target. Sometimes I break topics down into multiple nodes like that if one node gets too big. And for the final example, let's see where I can find my nodes on Linux privilege escalation by abusing a readable etc share file. So yeah, as you can see, a very specific node. Privilege escalation is a part of the post-exploitation phase, so we'd start there. Then I have a node just for grouping Linux post-exploitation nodes. I do this because I also have a node for Windows post-exploitation nodes, so it keeps them separate. Anyway, inside it, we have a privilege escalation node for Linux, which contains a node for etc password and etc shadow related techniques. And finally, a node on readable etc shadow, which is what we were looking for. All right, so hopefully now it's clear why one of the key requirements for a field manual is to be structured and well organized. This way, you will always find what you're looking for without issues. This is crucial because you can expect your field manual to get very, very large. In fact, what you see scrolling down the screen right now is a small portion of all the notes I have on my field manual. It's a lot, it's over 400 notes, and I never have any issue finding anything, precisely because of its structure. Anyway, before I move on to the next step, I just want to mention that in both Cherry Tree and Obsidian, you can search for your nodes by their names or their tags. So I would also recommend you to give your nodes some keywords as tags so that they become even easier to find. For example, here on this web server enumeration node, I make references to some tools such as WhatWeb. And by adding it as tags, I can find this node just by searching for WhatWeb using the Cherry Tree search functionality. So there's really no excuse for not finding your nodes when you combine structure with these tags. All right, now we can move on to the next important step in creating a field manual, which is writing down every technique you know. And naturally, this is the most time-consuming step of the whole process, as expected. Not only that, but your manual will only start to take shape as you start filling it with notes. So don't think that the structure step we just covered is something that is just done once. It's an iterative process. The structure changes as you add more nodes, and you have to play around with the structure to make your new nodes easy to find. And just like your overall manual has a structure, your notes themselves should as well. And that's what we're going to talk about now, the structure of a particular note. As an example, I use my note on MySQL service enumeration. Just a disclaimer, you don't have to be as rigid with the structure of your notes as you should with your overall manual. All right? The note structure can be more relaxed and fluid, but even then, all my notes follow a few patterns that I think are worth sharing. First, you can see that the very first portion of my note at the very top is a cheat sheet. Cheat sheets are basically just a table where I place the most useful commands or actions associated with the note. This way, I can quickly copy paste a command into the terminal when I need it. As you can see, I have an nmap command and a command for connecting to a SQL service. Simple stuff, really, just in case I forget, but it can get more complicated than this. Most of the time, when I refer to my manual during an engagement, I'll just quickly take a look at the cheat sheet to grab a command and get back into the action. So this is why I leave it at the very top of the note, so it's easy to reach. Also, notice how the cheat sheet table has two columns, a column for the action or the command and another for its description. You don't want to just list commands without a proper description, or else you might be confused as what command does and risk doing something wrong. Also, if your action is dangerous or has some side effect that's not obvious at first, you should include that in the description so that you know how your action impacts the target. Like for instance, some reconnaissance commands will secretly create files on the target, which might trigger some security defenses. in which case that should be on the description column so that you are aware of that, since it's sometimes you're not aware how a single action may impact the host. So it definitely should be in the description. Moving on to the next section, we have the related articles. Both Cherry Tree and Obsidian have this feature where you can create links between nodes. Like if I were to click on the SQL command link you see here, Obsidian would switch me to that node. I like having this section in my notes because oftentimes I'll break a topic down into multiple nodes. In this way, I can easily move around between them. Or like if a node includes a technique that will, say, reveal a password hash, I'll leave a link to my hashcats nodes. So since I'll likely want to crack these hashes later after using the technique. Basically, if you feel like a node is strongly related to another, save yourself some time and add it in the related article section so you can jump around between them. And the final section of this note is the overview section. As I said before, the cheat sheet is a place for quickly grabbing commands without much thinking. Well, the overview section is for more in-depth information about a topic. This is the section I'll refer to if I need a refresher on a topic. In your overview, you want to have a brief description of the topic at hand. As you can see, I spent a few lines summarizing the MySQL service. Also, you want to include why this topic is important to us. For instance, here I explained that a MySQL service might store sensitive data that may be useful to us in an engagement. You'll also want to add any other crucial details that comes to mind, like for instance, what the server's port number is, or what are the authentication mechanisms, or maybe an overview of the communication protocol, if that's applicable, that sort of stuff. Naturally, what you'll put on the overview section depends a lot on the topic itself. I have a few more examples to share. Here, in this note about local port forwarding, I include an image illustrating the overall concept of port forwarding, illustrating it. Embedding images into your notes is a good way of, say, illustrating protocols or adding flowcharts for decision making or screenshots, that sort of thing. So be sure to include them if you need it. And here I have my note on SMB enumeration. Notice how I created a separate section just for summarizing SMB authentication, because I feel like this is an important subject for the topic, and that is, it deserves its own section besides the overview. Again, you don't need to be rigid when it comes to note structure. Speaking of, what I have here is my note on file upload vulnerabilities. And as you can see, I don't have a cheat sheet section for it, cheat sheet. That's because the topic of file upload vulnerabilities doesn't lend itself well for having a cheat sheet. So instead, I have this section called methodology, in which I outline a step-by-step procedure for identifying file upload attacks. So the lesson here is that don't try to force a structure into your note. Rather, let the topic dictate the structure of the note. All right, now we are finally on the very last step of creating a field manual ahead of time, I believe. So if you were to follow along so far, you would have a very well-organized collection of notes that cover pretty much every technique you know. Just by having this, you're leagues ahead of the common CTF layer. But this is actually not enough, because remember, the point of a field manual is to free up your mind by doing some of the thinking for you. And you don't achieve that just by listing techniques. What we need to do now is to identify some common scenarios we might face during our engagements and associate them with a procedure of techniques in order to overcome the obstacle and achieve our goal. Basically, it goes back to what I was saying about not having to reinvent the wheel every time. Now, let me take a step back and explain what I mean by scenarios. You can think of a scenario as a well-defined common situation you find yourself in during engagements over and over again. More so, it's a situation that has some very clear goals and very clear ways of potentially achieving those goals. Here you can see some example of common scenarios like web application enumeration, Linux or Windows privilege escalation, gaining a foothold on Active Directory, that sort of stuff. Those are scenarios you find yourself in over and over again, and as such, you can stipulate a set of techniques to try once you find yourself in those scenarios. And these set of techniques are what I call procedures. So you can think of a procedures as a simple checklist that you keep on a separate section of your field manual so that you refer to it once you find yourself in such an error. I'll explain what I mean with an example. I have two examples to share actually. Here you can see my Linux privilege escalation procedure. It's just like I told you, it's just a simple checklist. Every single one of these checkboxes, I don't know if you can read them or not, but they all refer to a technique in my field manual. So every time I'm trying to escalate my privileges on a Linux box, I'll open up this notes, this procedure, and start checking away boxes one by one from top to bottom until I escalate my privileges. As you can see, I divided this procedure into a global and per user section. This is just because some of these techniques are just done once, while others have to be done for every user. So it's a good idea to separate them. So by following this procedure, I'm never lost when it comes to escalating privileges on Linux. I never forget of a technique of trying something because it's all written down. I just have to follow it. And here I have a final example of procedures. This time is my procedure on Active Directory compromise. And as you can see, it's pretty large. I divided it into 4 sections, starting from enumerating the hosts, then enumerating the Active Directory users, then getting a foothold into the environment, and finally attacking and compromising the environment. This is the most complete procedure I currently have on my manual, and every time I do a CTF that involves Active Directory exploitation, I'm confident that this procedure alone will carry me through it. Now, throughout all this presentation, you might be asking yourself, what happens if I'm facing a challenge? I open up my field manual, I follow the procedures, I look for techniques to try, and I still don't overcome the obstacle. The answer to that is pretty simple. You will have to figure out how to overcome the obstacle for yourself. The point of this presentation is not to present hacking as being about blindly following instructions like a robot, or to make hacking sound easy and algorithmic almost. Hacking, by its very nature, is about thinking outside the box. And no matter how good your field manual is, there will be times it will not be enough. And when that happens, you will think outside the box and you will figure out a solution. And when you do that, you will go back to your field manual and add the new technique you learned back into it, so that next time you have a new tool in your arsenal. Remember, failing is just an opportunity for improving. And as long as we try hard and keep our field manuals up to date, we'll make progress and become better hackers. All right, with that, that was it. I think we're ahead of schedule. So I guess we're gonna open up for the Q&A section. I don't really know how this works. If one of you guys can help me out.
I will hop on stage.
Yes.
All right. So if anybody has any questions, I can read it out. You did an awesome job, by the way. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Very well spoken.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And as you can see, my blog is on the very last page if anyone wants to check it out.
Sure. And
Thank you, everyone.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, say you do Jeopardy style CTFs as well as boot to root CTFs. Should you have a whole separate field manual for your Jeopardy style since it's different techniques?
Good question. To be honest, I don't really do Jeopardy style CTFs, mostly boot to root, but maybe it's not necessary if you follow my structure of having the different penetration test engagement cycle steps. Obviously, a Jeopardy style doesn't really fit a whole cycle, but you can probably find a place to fit it in. So I would not necessarily recommend creating a separate manual. If you can fit it in somewhere, please do. But yeah, I'm open to experimentation on this one
I
because I
would
don't really do.
probably have like a different section. I wouldn't make
Mhm.
an entirely new manual necessarily, but like having your own node for Jeopardy style, because it is like a different thought process. But keeping organized and not having multiple field manuals and things like that definitely keeps it simpler, I'd say. So
I agree. I also see some discussion on the chat about other note-taking software. Someone asked if Notion is a good option for note taking. I haven't used Notion, but I only heard people complain about it being bloated and slow. So I don't know. It's not an endorsement or otherwise. I just don't have any experience on it. Another person recommended Joplin. I know about Joplin. I tried using it. I don't remember why it didn't stick, but I liked that it had a command line interface option, so you can do it completely headless. But yeah, as I said before, we're mainly looking for the ability to structure our notes in a hierarchy and maybe embedding images and adding tags. So any text editor that supports this stuff will be good enough, on my view.
We got a question. All your base says, I have my notes scattered all over the place. Do you have any tips for unifying those notes?
That's a good question. I would say if you can at least tell what files you have notes all over the place, would be to try to do a CTF as you normally would. And when you face a challenge that you feel like you need to check your notes, try to find it. If you do find it somewhere, you make an entry on your field manual. If you don't, just take the opportunity to do it at that point. Because as someone who is now doing the tedious task of porting my notes from one software to another, I know how painful it can be to port all your notes from one place to the other. So if you follow this approach of doing a CTF and kind of porting your nodes as a just-in-time basis, I think it will be a little easier for you. Hopefully that answered the question.
White Glint says, do you have any certain template structure to organize your notes? So like, mm,
Not a structure per se. I did. I've, I don't know if I came up with this or if I saw someone else doing it, but my idea was that I would try to map all my different nodes into the different penetration test engagement cycles. So this is the structure I follow, and of course, between the different steps, I try to make a distinction between web applications, and within that, custom web applications and like common web applications such as Tomcat, WordPress, that sort of stuff, and
mm,
also reverse engineering and fake clients and all that. So I try to make, first of all, a distinction between uh, the, the steps in the engagement cycle, and then the type of application, and then I try to branch down from there.
okay.
So I think you need to see for yourself what works well for you. But in my experience, this approach works pretty well for me.
Arsenka says, can you somehow share your manual, your full manual?
Yes, I was expecting this question.
You have like a GitHub?
I have, yeah, I've gotten, since I posted my original blog post on CPTS tips, in which I gave like a sneak peek of my manual. I've gotten
Mhm.
literal dozens of people on email and Discord asking me for it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was advised that I should not
You can't share
publish my
everything,
manual.
but yeah.
First of all, just to be clear, I
Mhm.
would share my manual if I could, but if you had it, it will not bring you the same benefit as creating one for yourself, because
Mhm.
the real benefit for it would be
You need to
putting your mind.
know where everything
Yeah,
is. It's like a
yeah,
toolbox almost, right? So like if you don't actually
precisely,
like sort it yourself, you're not gonna know where your tools are. So
precisely. And just the act of writing down your own notes paradoxically makes you better at the techniques that you're trying to, because you have to do research to in order to write everything down. But
yeah.
anyway, as I was saying, I I was advised not to share my manual because, first of all, it may contain exam spoilers for CPTS.
Mhm.
I haven't
Yeah.
checked, so I don't want to risk it and
Yeah.
spoil something. It contains stuff like API tokens, which I naturally don't want to share,
Mhm.
and it definitely contains paywalled content because there's times I just copy paste something from Academy into my
Yeah.
notes, so it would be a violation of terms of service to share that.
Yeah.
But I am, as I said, porting you over to Obsidian. As I'm doing that, I'm rewriting everything so that hopefully I will be able to publish my manual, and will do
Mhm.
so like publicly in open source way. So if you want to check it out, go to my blog, maybe subscribe to the RSS feed, and eventually you will get a publication about me releasing my manual.
Nice. Well, you could also release like a just the structure of the manual without the notes part,
Yeah.
but I don't know how
Yes.
that would work exactly. But yeah.
Good question. Good point. I did, because when I released my blog post, people were asking me about it. I
Mhm.
said I cannot share my notes, but if you want, I can share the structure, and I did.
Yeah. Okay, nice.
Uh, on the chat, I published. Oh,
It is very big.
it's a very big image. It's supposed to be an URL. I don't know why the Discord resolved it to an image. I'll try to break down the URL.
So I've been using that structure, and I got to say, it took me hours to input every category and every child, but it was worth it.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's a long process. I don't recommend that you try to do it like in one sitting. As I said, just do your CTFs normally as you would, and as you learn more stuff, you will, here and there add your notes. Someone asked me to attach as a file instead of an image. I'll just post the link to the blog post. It's somewhere there,
Mhm.
the image itself.
Nice, nice.
Any other questions?
Um,
Oh,
how
yeah,
do
people typing.
you note HTTP modules inside your vault? CPS, for example, is specifically for content heavy modules. So how do you do like when you're doing your CPTS modules? How are you taking your notes inside of your vault? Are you so like do you
Uh,
have like a separate like field manual and then you have a separate area for your actual note taking?
um, yes, when I was doing the CPTS at the start, I had two separate documents. One for just
Mm-hmm.
like my stream of conscious note taking. Like as I was reading something, I wrote it down.
Yeah.
And then when I finished the module, I would look at everything I wrote down and then try to map into different notes inside my hierarchy of notes, right? In
Okay.
places that make sense.
Yeah.
And since you're mentioning the CPTS and the Hackbox Academy, as you must know, the pretty much all the contents have a cheat sheet section which you can download. So I also took that as an inspiration. I basically look at Hack the Box's cheat sheet to see what they consider important, and then I use that as a basis of what I should be making notes for. Because if the Hack the Box team think it's important enough to be in the cheat sheet, I should definitely have it in my on-field manual.
Nice. Um, I didn't fully understand what you said. Well, I'm sorry. But okay, wait. I guess there's like so many questions coming in that I'm like, yeah. But anyways, you said, could you repeat it slightly? So
Yeah, yes.
yeah,
My point was,
yeah,
honestly, I kind of forgot the question as well. My last point was that Hack the Box Academy modules have a cheat sheet section,
yeah,
which is like my own manual, a
yeah,
table
yeah.
with two columns. So
And you
if
can
you
implement that
if you
into your
read
field notes. Yeah.
you incorporate that into a manual, but more so than that, you can take what it's on the cheat sheet as what the Hack the Box team considers important. So if
Mm-hmm.
something is on the cheat sheet, you should have a note for that because it
Yeah.
means they consider it important. So it will likely, maybe, be on
Be
the
on
test,
the
the
test. Yeah,
exam.
for sure. The Pain says, what was the topic that you were making notes for that required the most unique layout in order to be the most the most use? Sometimes needed a wildly different format than usually. So like it's like sometimes when you're doing so when you're taking certain notes, you have to have like a completely different layout because it's
Mhm.
not it doesn't follow the same structure as your other notes necessarily.
Yes, yes. I know exactly the one that popped to my mind was Active Directory exploitation
Hmm.
because there's so many because it's more like exploiting Active Directory is so more like lateral movement. You have to go back and forth between different users in order to build up like a chain of attacks. So this note is more like a text or like a blog post in which I walk me through everything I need to know, almost like a user story. If someone is accustomed to software engineering, you would literally create a story like I will do this, then I will check that, then I will blah blah blah. So yeah,
Hmm.
Active Directory, in my experience, needed the most different format from the rest.
Yeah, I haven't taken a lot of notes for Active Directory, but it is a lot more like it is not the same as like web exploitation and
Yeah.
like yeah.
Someone
Absolutely.
asked, how well did the CPTS prep you? I'm sorry. How well did the CPTS prep you and assist in getting an offer for your current role?
Well, I think that CPTS was the, how do you say that in English? Like, what was the tipping point, if you know what I mean? Because I had at the point I was starting looking for jobs, was literally the week I received my CPTS certification. I
Mhm.
had a 1 year of software engineering experience. I was a recent graduate, and what else did I put in my CV? I guess I put my ranking on Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. But besides from that, the CPTS was the only thing that would set me apart from other candidates. And it's often repeated in our field that there are no entry level cybersecurity positions, or there are very few. And I think there's truth to that. So I was kind of expecting to settle down for a role that interested me less than my goal, which is penetration testing. But luckily, I think that CPTS was enough for them to take a gamble on me and bring me in as a junior penetration tester. uh, it's often repeated that CPTS is the best value entry level certification, but the OSCP is the one that will get you a job. I think there's obviously truth to that, but as someone who got the job with the CPTS, I don't think it's that much of a big of a deal. There are so much other things you can do to make you more appealing to recruiters. For instance, having a blog. I think that having a blog was what really set me apart, because it shows like commitment, shows like you have passion for cybersecurity. So it was a really roundabout way of answering your question, but I think that the CPTS prepared me well for getting a job. Not only on the technical side of the skills I learned, but it also showed the recruiters that I was ready for the job.
Enzo says, "Did you base your checklist manual on any available ones? Would you recommend any?" So your
Yeah,
checklist for, yeah.
yeah. I did look up some Linux and Windows privilege escalation checklists. I
Hmm.
think they're one for uh, Hack Hacktricks. I think it's the name of the website.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good, but if you're studying for the CPTS, I would recommend that you create your own checklist from what the CPTS teaches you, because um like as expected, the exam will test you on the stuff that you learn on the course. So if your checklist is full of stuff that it's out of bounds for what the exam expects, you will waste your time. Most likely, you don't know, but it's more beneficial to create your own checklist if you're preparing for this specific exam. Otherwise, yeah, go look for some checklists online and add new techniques to your procedures.
Um, how much time do you have? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. No pressing,
Okay.
no pressing.
Um, Lux404 says, and I don't fully understand the question necessarily, but maybe I'm just like
That's
reading
fine.
it wrong. But it's I know that taking personal notes adds the touch of personal experience, but most frameworks like Metasploit does most of the work for us. Actually, you can add new stuff to your Metasploit database locally and make references to them, including payloads and notes through MSF console. So can I just do it in that way? So I think well, I guess like the issue with the question is like the one of the good things about taking notes is that or doing it yourself is it kind of wires it in your head better, I guess, and you
Yeah,
remember it
yeah.
better. And so that's like the important part of taking notes. And also like just handwriting notes as well is kind of important in that way. But I don't really handwrite notes as much anymore. Um, I don't know. Like, what's your
Yeah,
thoughts
but
about just like using MSF?
first of all, I completely agree with your point that writing
Mhm.
down your own notes, it brings more benefits than just having the notes, because you also learn why you do it. So it's more
Mhm.
than the sum of its parts in that sense. But regarding MSF, I guess I'm exposing my own ignorance here, but I didn't know that MSF had this functionality at all. I mostly use MSF just to, grab some POC if I need it. I don't use it as a full-blown framework.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can use MSF to the same extent as you can with a field manual like I described, like a custom written one. I highly doubt that's possible, but maybe it's a useful addition alongside your handwritten notes. But
There's
I
some
wouldn't really
crazy
know.
stuff that you can do with Metasploit. Like there's like a web console and stuff. Like I didn't even know that it exists. Like on some of the things that you could do with it. It's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I need to get spend more time with it.
Yeah. Is there any remaining questions?
I see someone asking me if I can share my procedures.
Oh yeah.
I will think about it because someone may look at my procedures and think, he wrote this in preparation for the CPTS. So if I just follow the procedures, maybe I can just pass the CPTS by just doing that. And I don't, even if it's not true, it's not true. If you follow my procedures, you will not just pass the CPTS just on that. But I don't want that on my shoulders and people accusing me of, helping people pass the exam
I
in
think
an
like
unfair way.
it's fine to share like a methodology of just like how you do things, but like I think that if people like build a dependency on like someone else's methodology, they kind of like defeat the purpose because the whole point is to develop your own understanding of things, your own methodology, your own way of looking at problems, right?
Yeah,
And we can
correct.
only just help in doing that, right?
Yeah, you absolutely. If when I eventually share my notes, you should, if you want, take a look at it and incorporate what you're missing into your own notes. But again, as I often repeat, it's a process of writing down your own notes that make the most benefit for you. So keep that in mind. There's a fun question. If you had to pick between AD and web to hack for the rest of your life, which one will you pick? I guess I would pick web because that's the only domain in which I have professional experience in. As an application security engineer, I don't do infrastructure testing, so I will not test Active Directory stuff. It does sound fun, but I think I'm again someone who with a software engineering background. I know web applications better than I know Active Directory. So yeah, web, yes.
You get bored of doing AD for the rest of your life. Yeah, I guess that is
That
true.
can be true.
All right, if anybody has more questions, please type them in now. We're going to wrap this up in a few minutes and let BRM get on his way. In the meantime, while you're doing that, thank you for doing this. This is super helpful, even in my understanding. I had read your blogs, but this was so much more in depth, and it'll really help in the long run. So I do appreciate it.
Thank you. It was very fun. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so it looks like you're just getting a lot of, props. Hey, thanks. I don't see any questions. So if you do have a question, like I said, do it right now. Otherwise, we're going to let him go on his way. Oh, you're welcome for the session. These are fun. If any of you guys out there have a skill that you think would benefit everybody in our community, by all means, just send me a DM. We're looking for new ideas, new ways to do the workshops, different topics. It originally started, we were only going to do like regular Jeopardy style CTF stuff, but it's kind of branched out since then. So feel free, just send me a DM. Definitely need to fill in the schedule. I would love to do this once a week if possible, but we just haven't had enough people. So keep that in mind, everyone. All right. Yeah, we're going to share the presentation. Well, I'm going to put this up online, Hanzo, so you'll be able to watch this over again if you need the notes.
Yeah,
I
and
think
if you
that's
also
it.
need the, sorry
What's that?
to talk over you. I was going to say, if you need the PowerPoint presentation as well, I can share that.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I can put it in the link with the video if you don't mind. If you could just send that to me in a DM, or you could put it on here if you like. That's up to you how you want to do that.
Yeah, I'll see that after the presentation.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for coming, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.